Hi, thank you. Well, I was born with an unusual visual condition called achromatism, which means that I see in grayscale, so I've never seen a color. I've always seen in grayscale, so I've never seen blue, yellow, pink. I don't know what color looks visually. So as a child, I wanted to understand what color was, but it was impossible because there was no way of sensing color. So I tried to ignore the existence of color, but it was impossible for me to ignore color, because even if you don't see color, you can't ignore that color exists, because people keep mentioning colors every single day. So you hear names of color in things that have nothing to do with the beauty of color. You hear it in Yellow Pages, Bluetooth, Greenpeace, Red Cross, Orange, Red Bull, Pink Panther, the Green Card, James Brown is in his last name, or Greenland, a huge country that also has a color name. So I kept hearing the names of colors, and I couldn't ignore that color exists. Also, when color is used as a code, it can be a bit confusing, hot water and cold water. Or when it's used as a map, this is fine. But if I go to Tokyo, I can get easily lost, because some maps only use color codes. And also, when I was learning the colors of flags, I had this situation. So 3 countries share exactly the same flag. Also, when I spoke to people, I had this situation. If someone would ask me, have you seen a man with ginger hair, blue eyes, and dressed in pink? I would have absolutely no idea, because the only information I get here is that the man has hair, that he has eyes, and that he's not naked, basically. So the reason why I wanted to sense color was not because I wanted to sense the beauty of color. I wanted to sense color because it's a social element. I didn't want to solve a problem. I wanted to solve a curiosity. I was curious about color because you keep mentioning it. I didn't want to change my sight because there's many advantages in seeing in grayscale. I have better night vision, for example. I can also see longer distances because color doesn't interfere with distance. I can detect camouflages easily because many camouflages are based in color. And also, photocopies are cheaper in black and white. So this was always an advantage. So I didn't want to change my sight, but I wanted to have color perception. That's why I thought of creating a new sensory organ that would allow me to sense color independently from my existing senses. I was studying music. I was a pianist, so I was studying piano. Piano is a black and white instrument, so I liked studying music. But then when I was studying music, I realized that there's many theories relating color and sound. Isaac Newton created the theory centuries ago relating each color of the rainbow to a specific note. So I was really interested in taking this scale into practice. So how could I sense color through a new input? The first prototype we did was with Adam Montandon in 2003. The aim was to create a new organ that would allow me to feel color, and we decided it would be first through sound. So it was a system that was basically a camera that picked up the color frequencies in front of me and then sent them to a system that slowed down the frequencies of color until it became audible. So I was able to hear the sounds of color around me. Each color has its own sound. If we could hear red, we would hear a frequency between F and F sharp. And that's the note that I hear. So this is the sine waves that I hear for each color. This is from red to orange, so it's very microtonal. And then it goes up and up. So at the beginning, it was like hearing electronic music wherever I would look, because there's color everywhere. So I had to get used to this new input of reality. And then it slowly became more and more normal until it became a new perception, and it became normal to hear color. We also added just different volume levels depending on the saturation. So if the color is dull, it's less loud, and if it's very vivid, it's very loud. So I could hear different shades of saturation through volume. There was a point I was able to sense all the visual spectrum through sound, so I didn't see why I should stop at the visual spectrum. There's many more colors that surround us that the human eye cannot sense, like infrareds and ultraviolets. So in 2008, I decided to extend my perception beyond the visual spectrum. Since then, I can sense near infrared and near ultraviolet. So this allows me to sense colors that are invisible to the human eye. It's practical to sense infrared, for example. It allows me to know if there's movement detectors in a room. So if I go in and I sense there's infrared, it's usually because there's alarms that have infrared. So I can go to a shop or a bank and tell if the alarms are on or off, and in many cases they are off. So it's interesting to know that some of these sensors are not actually working. Also, ultraviolet allows me to detect if it's a good day or a bad day to sunbathe. So if I sense there's a high level of ultraviolet, then I just avoid the sun or I put some sun cream. So my aim is just to continuously extend my perception of color beyond the visual spectrum. So I didn't want to use technology, and I didn't want to wear technology. I wanted to become technology. I wanted to create a new body part, a new organ that would allow me to sense color independently. So at first I thought of creating a third eye that would be implanted in the middle of my head, but I thought that this would limit my perception of color to what I have in front. So then I thought of creating a human antenna that would allow me to sense color independently from my senses, and also an organ that would allow me to sense color 360 degrees. So there's many species in the world that have antennas. So I thought that creating a human antenna would be the best option. I thought the most practical one would be the cetaceous type of antenna. So when I designed the antenna, I went to the doctor and I said I wanted an antenna implant, and the doctor said, sorry, but we don't do antenna implants here. If you want to have an antenna implant, you'll have to convince a bioethical committee that this is ethical. So I explained the surgery to the bioethical committee, and they said that this implant was not ethical for three main reasons. One, because it's not the recreation of a pre-existing sense. The second, because it's not the recreation of a pre-existing body part. And third, because they were extremely worried about the image the hospital would have if someone came out from the hospital with an antenna sticking out of the head. So they said no to the surgery, and then I tried to find a doctor willing to do the surgery anonymously, and I found a doctor. So the surgery went on. My hair was removed here at the back, my skin was reduced, and then the head was drilled 4 times, so I would have 4 different implants. One is a chip that vibrates inside my bone, so it's no longer sound, it's a vibration inside the bone that becomes an inner sound. So I feel different vibrations of the spectrum inside my bone. The low frequencies are infrared, so I feel the vibration low in my skull, and then ultraviolets are very high, and in between you have all the visual spectrum. So I feel color now through vibrations inside my bone that become inner sounds. There's also another implant, well, 2 more, which are to hold the whole structure of the antenna. And the 4th implant is internet connection, so I can also receive colors from external devices. So people can send colors through their mobile phone directly into my head, so I no longer need to sense colors only from the antenna. I can also receive colors from other places. So it's basically 4 different implants. Then everything was closed, and it took 2 months for the antenna and my skull to merge. So now this is part of my skeleton, and I'm officially taller now because this is part of my body. The internet connection allows me to receive colors from different continents. There's 5 people that have permission to send colors to my head. They can do it using their mobile phones, so they can stream live images from wherever they are directly into my head. So I could be here, but I could be sensing colors that are in Australia or in Japan. So this allows my friends to share a sense, and I see this as the use of the internet as a sense or a sensory extension. I think we'll start seeing much more of this in the 2020s, the use of the internet as a sense and the internet of senses. Also, receiving colors through the internet means that they can also send colors when I'm sleeping. If they send colors when I'm dreaming, my friends can either wake me up or they can color my dreams. So if they start sending blue colors at night, my dream suddenly becomes blue, or my dream takes me to the sea or to the sky. So they can influence the color of my dreams, or they can just color them depending on the colors they send me at night. This is an MRI scan of my brain. So my brain has changed. I feel no difference between the software and my brain anymore. That's why I define myself as a cyborg. I feel related to this word because cyborg comes from the union between cybernetics and organism. So I identify myself as a cyborg, and this is why I tried to explain to the UK government in 2004, because there's a law that says electronic equipment is not allowed on passport photos, and my picture was not allowed on the passport photo. They asked me to remove the antenna from the picture, but I replied to them that I'm not wearing an antenna. I have an antenna, and that this is a part of my body, and that I identify myself as a cyborg, and in the end, they allowed me to appear in the passport with the antenna. This helps me travel because in airports they don't usually like technology, so I have several problems at airports because they always stop me, and then if I show the passport, it helps a lot. Also, I'm now in conversations with the Swedish government because all the materials that I used to create the antenna are Swedish, so I'm telling them that I am Swedish because a part of my body is Swedish. So I think that I should be entitled to apply for Swedish citizenship. So I think there should be a 6th point here that says if you have a Swedish body part for several years, you have the right to apply for Swedish citizenship. So if they say yes, we might see that in the future, each country will have a period of time. Maybe if you have a Chinese organ for 10 years, you can apply for Chinese citizenship, or if you have a British organ for 7 years, you can apply. So I guess each country will require a number of years. I see all this as cyborg art, the art of creating your own senses, the art of creating your own body parts, and the art of designing your own perception of reality. The issue with cyborg art is that I am the artist, I am the work of art, and I am the only audience of my art because it's all happening inside my head. So the issue is that it's basically a bit of a post-art movement because it breaks with the traditional art forms where the artist creates an external artwork and it's presented in a space. In cyborg art, it all happens inside the mind. So it's a movement that it could be also called perceptionism because it's based on creating a new perception that happens inside the artist. But this new sense can also be expressed in different ways. I can express myself in the way I dress. For example, if I want to dress in silence, I will dress all in black. If I want to wear C major, I would wear these 3 colors. Pink, yellow, and blue create C major. This is a minor chord, so I would dress like this in a sad occasion. So in a funeral, I would wear these colors because it's a sad chord. Or I can also wear a song. So I can design clothes that sounds like a melody. This is a tie that I designed that sounds like electronic music. So when I listen to it, I hear a melody of electronic music. The longer the tie, the longer the melody. Also, the way I see houses has changed. I can now design a house so that it sounds better. For example, if I want a living room to sound C major, I would paint it pink, blue, and yellow. So then it sounds C major when you go in the living room. I would always paint floors red, because red is the lowest frequency, so it gives a profound sound to the whole house. Ceilings would be black and white, because if you lie down, then it's silence. Black and white is silence. Exit doors would always be green, because green is in the middle of the spectrum, so it tunes yourself before you go out in the street. And then bedrooms would have 3 colors: turquoise, which is B, then pink, which is E, and violet, which is D. So you have B, E, D, bed. So bed, these 3 colors make sense to have them in the bedroom. And then in the kitchens, I would always have a high frequency like violet. Violet is the highest visible frequency, so it keeps you alert in kitchens. It's also a color that you don't usually eat, so it doesn't interfere with food. Food has changed a lot as well, because now I can compose music with food, because each thing that we eat has a specific frequency, so it has a specific sound. So you can actually compose music with food, especially with salads, because there's lots of notes in salads. So you can actually eat a song, and that's also a way that you can share it with other people by creating a chromaphone. It's a plate that rotates. You put the food on the plate, and then when you rotate it, you can hear it, because the plate has an antenna and a loudspeaker. This is a project I've done with Celida Can Roca, a restaurant in Catalonia, where you can actually go there and eat a song. So imagine if you want to have some Mozart, you can have some Mozart as a main dish, or some Lady Gaga dessert. So you can decide what songs you want to eat. This is an example of how elements that you find in a supermarket sound. So now I can compose music by looking at things. I no longer need to compose music with a piano. Depending on the colors that I look, the music is created inside my head. And I can amplify the sound from my head to an audience, and these are color concerts. So I really enjoy walking around supermarkets, because that's where I found most colors. It's like going to a nightclub. Just walking around a supermarket, you hear lots of melodies, especially the zone with cleaning products. That's the most exciting area of a supermarket, because it has unexpected colors and very loud and very unusual combinations. Milk is silent, so white elements have no sound. It's not only supermarkets, also art has become music, so I can now go to a museum and listen to a Picasso or listen to an Andy Warhol, because all painters have become composers. This is the sound of the scream, for example, which is very microtonal. It has many, many tones that are close to each other, so it creates these disturbing vibrations. These are all the frequencies together. And then Andy Warhol sounds very different, very loud, because it's very saturated. So you can usually hear an Andy Warhol from the other end of the museum, because it's very saturated. Whereas older paintings sound less, because the saturation is much, much lower. This is now an older painting. So with Goya or Velázquez or Da Vinci, you need to get closer because the saturation is lower, so the colors are very, very soft. You can easily distinguish a painter from the other from the colors they used, so the sounds are very different. Also, the way I sense people has changed, because now when I look at someone's face, I can actually hear the face. So if I stand close, I like doing sound portraits, where instead of drawing someone's face, I get close and then I write down the sound of the eyes, the sound of the ears, the sound of the hair, the lips, and then I create a sound file, and then I send them an MP3 of their face so they can listen to themselves. And we all sound different. One of the first sound portraits I did was of Prince Charles. I asked him if I could listen to his face, and this was his reaction when I asked him if I could listen to his face. We all sound different. Judi Dench, for example, has silent hair. James Cameron has a very, very high-pitched sound of skin. Al Gore has different notes in his eyes because he has different shades of turquoise. Tim Berners-Lee has a very unusual sound of eyelids. Moby sounds less than other people because he has no hair, so that's one note less. Macaulay Culkin sounds C major, so he's unusual because he sounds like a pure chord. Steve Wozniak has a very pure sound of I's, a very sharp sound of A. Robert De Niro has a very unusual high-pitched sound of lips, very, very, very high pitch. Woody Allen sounds very unsaturated, like an old painting, and Philip Glass very microtonal. And Bono had very loud glasses here. So we all have a very different soundscape. What really shocked me through the years is that people who say they're black, they're not actually black, and people who say they're white, they're not actually white. We are all different shades of orange. So people who say they're black, they're actually very, very dark orange, and people who say they're white, they're very, very light orange. This is an example of a face concert. You can also create rhythms from people's faces. I usually do this in concerts, so people cue from the audience, and then I start creating rhythms from the people's faces, and then the electronic music is created from the faces of the audience. So if the concert sounds really bad, it's their fault, not my fault, because that's where the music is coming from. The last face concert I did was of Prince Albert II of Monaco. He liked the sound of his face so much that he's using it as his ringtone now. So when we started this project in 2003, we had no idea if it would go well and if it would have secondary effects, and it has had secondary effects. The secondary effect that we were not planning is that not only colors became sounds, but also sounds became colors. So telephone lines, for example, sound green, or when I listen to music, each note that I hear relates to a color. So I can now paint what I hear. This is, for example, Mozart's Queen of the Night, painted note by note from the middle to the end. This is Baby Baby by Justin Bieber, transposed into color, which comes out very pink, Justin Bieber. Almost all his music comes out pink. These are speeches. When we speak, we also use different frequencies, so we all have different colors when we speak. These are two speeches. This is Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream, and this is a speech by Hitler. So it shows the difference in frequencies they used when they spoke. Also, you can use these codes in concerts, so musicians learn the codes, and then instead of reading scores, they play the colors that are projected on the stage. So then this is a musical chord that they sing or they play. Also, it can be used in public sculptures, where you can download an app and then you can hear the music through the colors of the public sculpture. This is a free app that can be downloaded on Android phones, and then through the mobile phone, you can hear the colors around you. So you can use the camera of your Android phone, and then you listen to the colors around you, so you can create public sculptures, or also I created projections of colors that you can use the mobile phone to hear music. So that's a way of sharing the sense that is inside my head. Also, this project has become a social project because the antenna is visible. So people have stopped me in the street every single day since March 22nd, 2004. What people thought this was in 2004 was a reading light. Many people thought this was a reading light, so they would ask me if I could turn on the light in 2004. In 2005, 2006, people thought it was a microphone like this one. So they thought I was speaking to someone. In 2007, 2008, people thought it was a hands-free phone, that I was on the telephone, because many taxi drivers started having hands-free telephones. In 2009, people thought it was a GoPro cam, that I was filming my life, so people would wave at me. In 2012, 13, people thought it was something to do with Google Glass. In 2014, 15, children would ask if this was some kind of extendable selfie stick. And last year, people would shout at me, Pokemon, and they tried to catch me. So it changes what people think it is, and hopefully in the future, in the 2020s, people will just think it's a new sensory organ, an antenna, a new body part, and people will know other people with new organs and new senses. We created the Cyborg Foundation with Moon Rivas in 2010 to help people like you extend your senses and add new organs in order to extend your perception of reality. So we've done many projects with people who have the interest or the curiosity of adding new senses. We also defend cyborg rights, the right to have surgery and the right to be identified as being technology. And also we promote cyborg art. Some of the projects we've done is the internal radar. They are earrings that vibrate whenever there's presence in front of you. They're very simple. It's just earrings that vibrate when someone walks in front of you. So depending on the interval between an ear and the other ear, you can feel the speed of someone walking in front of you. So you become a radar, and depending on the interval, you can slowly gain the sense of speed. So you can tell if someone's walking at 5 per hour, or 8 per hour, or 2 per hour. Also, if you turn them around, you can sense what's behind you. So you have rearception or retroception, so you could feel if there's a wall behind you or someone behind you. Also, the seismic sense is inside Moon Riva's feet. Whenever there's an earthquake in the world, she feels a vibration in her feet. So she has like 2 heartbeats, her own heartbeat and the earth beat, because there's earthquakes every 8 minutes, so she feels vibrations constantly. Depending on the Richter scale, the vibration is higher or lower. So she feels a close connection with Earth that she didn't feel before. She also uses it artistically. Whenever she feels an earthquake, she dances, and depending on the vibrations, the dance goes in one way or another. So in her performances, dance performances, if there's no earthquakes, there's no dance. She also now has a new implant that allows her to feel moonquakes. So whenever there's a seismic activity on the moon, she also feels a vibration in her feet. This was, first she had it in her arms, but now she has it in her feet as well. So this is a way to connect to space. I also use my internet connection to connect to space. I use it to connect to NASA's International Space Station. So when I connect to the live stream of NASA's International Space Station, my sense of color is no longer on Earth, but in space. So I can explore space while my body is here. We call this becoming a senstronaut, to send your senses to space and explore space while your body is here. So I think we'll see more sensstronauts in the future, how we can all have a sense in space while our body is here. Other projects we've done is that I had a tooth missing, so I didn't want to have it replaced with a normal tooth, so we created the tooth with a small light inside so that I can have emergency light. When I click, I can have emergency light in my mouth. So it's a very simple implant that if you have a tooth missing, you could also have it implanted. So it's a tooth with a little LED inside. We also created a project. This is the light tooth. We created it in Brazil. In Brazil, we also collaborated with a dentist in order to create a communication system. So one tooth was installed inside my mouth, and the other tooth was installed inside Moon Riva's mouth. And whenever I click, she receives a vibration in her mouth. And whenever she clicks, I receive a vibration in my mouth. So this is a way of communication from mouth to mouth. We both know the Morse code, so depending on the rhythm, we can send words to each other. And it works through mobile phones, so I click, the clicks go to my phone, from my phone to her phone, wherever she is in the world, and then from her phone to her mouth. So it works through Bluetooth, so it's a Bluetooth tooth that allows us to communicate from mouth to mouth. We call this the transdental communication system, and it was first demonstrated in Sao Paulo in 2016. People in the audience were giving us words, and then we were sending the words to each other, and it worked. So the first public demonstration was in Sao Paulo last year. But this could also work in under the ocean, because it's a system of communication that doesn't need ears, it doesn't need sight. It can work only from mouth to mouth, so it doesn't need air conduction. It can also work in space, because there's no air in space. So it's a new communication system that might work in the future when we live in space. Also, we collaborated with students in France, in Aix-en-Provence, where we created a solar plexus that allows you to feel the heat of the sun. So in order to feel if there's solar flares, you can have a small chip here that allows you to feel solar flares. Other projects are fingerboards, different fingertips that allow you to sense whatever you want through vibrations. One of the nice projects is that allows you to feel where some planets are. So if you want to know where the moon is now, it's impossible for you to feel where the moon is, because you cannot see it. But the moon might be there, because it might be at the other end of at the other side of the Earth. Or you can also feel planets, specific planets that you might be interested. So if you are interested in Venus, you can have the Venus fingerboard, and then whenever you point at Venus, you will feel a vibration, or Saturn or Jupiter, so you can decide what planet you want to have in your fingertips. So this is a way of sensing space and the cosmos, a way of detecting and feeling where we are in the planet. Also, there's a sense of atmospheric pressure created by Manel Munoz, who is here somewhere. He's over there. So he has this prototype that he has created that is permanently attached in his body and allows him to feel atmospheric pressure changes. He's had it continuously since August, so he's getting used to these pressure changes. So whenever the pressure goes up, maybe you should explain it. Well, he's over there. Maybe you come here, because you are here, so maybe it's easier if you just show it. He's from Barcelona, and he can, maybe it's easier if we explain it.
Okay, hello. Yes, I have it at the back of my head, and it works. Yeah, the battery is a problem. So when the pressure comes on,
rises, when the pressure rises,
I feel a vibration
going up.
Yeah, going up my ears, and if the pressure drops, I can feel it, the vibration going down. And yeah, now, for example, some of the consequences are that I know about the altitude. If I'm traveling to some place, I can feel if I'm going up an altitude or I'm going down, or if I'm in a place staying, I can feel if some information about the forecast, because sometimes when the atmospheric pressure drops,
it means that it will rain.
Yeah,
so yeah,
exactly.
So the changes in pressure might allow him to predict if it's going to rain or if it's going to be some wind. So in the long term, this will allow him to predict the weather, I guess.
But this is the first prototype, so I'm working now in a smaller one, because the aim is implanted this to be part of my own body, but this is a long process, and this is the second or third month that I'm having it, so I'm working on it. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the first prototype. We always recommend to have an XOsense before you have the implant. So this is the example of an XOsense. I guess you all know what exoskeletons are, skeletons from the outside. This is an exosense, a sense permanently attached from the outside. So his brain is now getting used to this new input, and when the brain gets used to it, then he will work on creating the organ which will be implanted in his body. My new sense that I'm creating this year for myself is the sense of time. I want to have a new sensory organ that will be implanted inside my head. It will be circular, and it will be between the skin and the bone. And it's an organ for the sense of time. We all have a sense of time, but we don't have an organ for the sense of time. So I'm curious to see what would happen if we had an organ for the sense of time. This is now being 3D printed in New York. I'll call it the solar crown. And it will give me a point of heat that will take 24 hours to go around my head. So depending on where I feel the heat, I will know where the sun is in relation to the Earth. So if I feel the point of heat is here, it means it's 12 o'clock solar time in London. If I feel it here, it's in Iceland. This is in the Atlantic. This is the USA. So I will feel where the sun is rising, and this should allow me to feel what time it is wherever I am. So in the long term, this will give me perfect perception of time. But the experiment is to see whether or not I can control my perception of time. If in a few years, when my brain gets used to it, when it gets used to the time organ, I want to see if I can stretch time. If I want a situation to last longer, I'll program the heat to go a bit slower so that I feel that time is stretching. Or if I want time to go faster, I'll make it go a bit faster so I feel that time is going faster. So it's basically an organ that will be able to take Albert Einstein's theory of time relativity into practice. And it's an experiment to see whether or not we can modify our perception of time if we have an organ for time. If it works, then I could eventually change my perception of age. If I want to feel that I've lived 160 years, I could do that by changing the speed of a year. So if I want years to last a little longer, this will give me a longer life. So I might be biologically 70 years old, but my brain might think that I'm 120. So that's the experiment, to see whether or not you can control your perception of time if you have an organ for time. Also, this is the different projects we've collaborated in the order of creating cyborg rights. First was with robo-laws at the European Union, and also in this year we presented the Cyborg Bill of Rights with Rich McKinnon at South by Southwest. One of the main rights is the right to have surgery. Now, these are not bioethically accepted. This is seen as a trans-species surgery because it's the addition of organs and senses that are not traditionally human. As you know, in the 20th century, becoming a transgender was really difficult. There were no bioethical committees accepting transgender surgeries, but there's more and more bioethical committees accepting transgender surgeries. Now we have the same situation with trans-species surgeries, that bioethical committees do not accept them as ethical, but we believe that in the future, adding new senses and organs will be ethical. Basically, because becoming a cyborg is going to help society, and it's going to help our planet in many different ways. If we all, for example, had night vision, for example, we wouldn't have to use artificial light, so cities would be dark. If we all had night vision, half of the planet would be dark when it's night, because we would be able to see at night. So this would save a lot of energy for the planet. It would be much better for the planet and for other species. By turning on the lights, we are influencing negatively to many other species. So by adding night vision, for example, we wouldn't be doing this. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's ethical. Also, if you could control your temperature, for example, then you wouldn't have to use air conditioning or heaters in the summer or in the winter. So by designing ourselves, we need to design less the planet. So I think that slowly society will see that it is ethical for us to become trans-species and to add senses and organs that we don't traditionally have. This is it. I hope that you have some questions now, and we can just talk. I think we have some time for Q&A.
First of all, I think a big round of applause for Neil. It was amazing. I have a question. I'm really curious. Isn't it uncomfortable when you sleep, for example, or is it?
No.
No?
No, I've had it for 13 years. My arms are more uncomfortable in many cases when I sleep, because sometimes they are annoying, but the antenna doesn't really bother me, no.
Okay. Questions? Over there, please.
Do I manage
Do
to
you
separate?
manage to separate the waves? Yeah.
Yes, this is a new input. I'm not using my ear. It's not sensory substitution. If I was using headphones, it would be confusing because I would be interfering with my sense of hearing, but this is no longer my sense of hearing. This is an independent sense. If I was deaf, I could still sense color through the vibrations in my head, and if I was blind, I could still distinguish color. So it doesn't work through any of my existing senses.
Yeah, but I mean, can you see the colors that I'm wearing and in the same time see what he's wearing and the pink behind you? And can you separate these? Like,
I don't see
feeling
color.
them
I sense color, and I
not
decided
see,
to
but-
sense it as a dominant color. So I didn't use an eye tracker because I'm not interested in connecting sight with color. My aim was to have a sense of color. My aim was not to know the color of everything that surrounds me, but my aim was to have a sense of color. So I decided to have an organ that would give me the dominant color in front of me. But if anyone wanted to have this, then you could simply add an eye tracker here that would connect what you're looking to what you're hearing. But that was not my intention. But if someone would like, you could also choose stereo or 4 divisions. You could have polyphony. You could have it in many different ways. Yes.
Thanks.
Okay.
Other questions? Over here.
Are you able to record the sounds that you hear?
No. So this is not AI. This is AS. So in many cases, AI would do things like this maybe, or artificial intelligence, for example, also would give me the names of colors, not the frequency. This is not an artificial intelligence. This is an artificial sense. So it's the brain that needs to create the knowledge and also to remember. There's no recording system. There's no intelligence in this system. This is simply giving me the vibrations of color in my head in the same way that color is arriving in your eyes. And it's up to your brain to remember the colors that you've seen. And it's up to my brain to remember the colors I've perceived. So the difference between merging with AI and merging with AS is that if you merge with AI, the machine is giving you the intelligence. If you merge with AS, your brain needs to create the intelligence. Otherwise, so it's a different type of approach, I guess.
Hello. Do you associate colors with feelings? For example, when the sky is blue, we have a pleasant feeling, or if it's gray, cloudy, we are not so happy during that day.
Yeah, my relationship with feelings, with color, is a bit maybe a bit different from people who see them. In my case, red is the lowest frequency, so to me, red is the most peaceful color. In most cases, in most cultures, red is associated to violence or to passion or to different. But in physically, red is actually the most innocent color. It has the lowest frequency, so it's very innocent. Whereas the most violent and passionate color is violet, because violet has a very high frequency. So I think traffic lights should be violet at the top, or stops should not be red. They should be violet physically, because they have a higher frequency of light.
Thank you.
Hello.
Over there or over
Here.
there? Okay.
Here. Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question. Does the sounds play continuously when you are near an object, a colored object, or just for a moment and then?
No, continuously, all the time.
Isn't it disturbing?
No, it's in the same way that you are always smelling and you are always hearing and you're always basically seeing, even if you close your eyes. So it's similar to smell, that you're always smelling, but your brain is not focusing all the time with smell, and my brain is not focusing all the time with color, but I'm always sensing it, yes.
Thank you.
How is the implant powered, and how do you maintain power to it?
So now I have to charge myself with coil, but from the outside, but the aim is to use body energy, and the aim is to use a small turbine in the blood vessel so that the circulation of blood will continuously charge the implant. The aim of all cyborgs is to charge with your own energy, because we are creating energy with our body, so much energy that we could use. So all the people that I know of would like to charge themselves, not to use external energy, but it's still a bit complex to use the turbine, but that would be very practical.
Somebody over there is very keen to ask a question for a long time already, so. Okay. Okay.
I have
Here
the
you go.
microphone now.
Here you go.
Okay.
No, I've seen him
So,
for a long time. Okay. Sure.
The biggest question, you said yesterday that you would encourage us to become cyborgs. I mean, you had a sight problem. Why?
No, it wasn't a problem. It was a curiosity. I said it was not, the aim was not to solve a problem, but I was curious about color. There's many people who are blind or colorblind who have no problems and no interest in seeing or sensing color. So it's curiosity, the aim.
So the question is why? Why should we become cyborgs?
As I just said before, the last is because we are a species that has been changing the planet for thousands of years, and we've been destroying the planet for thousands of years in order to survive. And I think this is wrong, that we should not design the planet. We should design ourselves in order to survive. I think it's much more logical that we would do this. Instead of creating artificial light, this is not logical. All these lights here, this is ridiculous. And it will be seen as ridiculous in 500 years, how we decided to light up the planet instead of giving ourselves night vision. It makes much more sense to have night vision instead of creating light bulbs, because it's better for us, for the planet, and for other species. And you can say this to any of the existing senses you can think of. So that's the reason why I think it's ethical that we start designing ourselves and we stop changing the planet.
But do you think in reality it's going to be adopted on a larger scale, this
Yes.
kind of technology?
Yes, for sure.
Over there, I think? Or?
Pink and magenta don't have a frequency. How do you sense them? What
Well,
do you sense when you have pink in front of you?
it's red. I sense red, but then I see that it's higher, lighter. So I see shades of gray. So if I hear red, but I see that the color is light, then I know it's pink.
But pink is not light red, it's pink. It's
What is pink?
Pink is a mixture of two frequencies. There is no frequency that corresponds to pink or to magenta.
Yes, there is.
No, there's
The-
absolutely
For
no...
pink, yes. For magenta, not. But for pink, it's light, red. There's two scales. I created two sonochromatic scales. One is pure, and one is based on human perception. There's the sonochromatic scale that is based on human perception includes magenta, and then it includes pink as being the continuation. But the pure one, red, would be pink. If I hear pink, then yeah. In the same with brown. Brown is orange in this case as well.
Hello. So by far, personally, I think the most interesting thing that you said is relating to night vision. I'm here.
Okay,
I'm here.
thank
Night vision. Is there any project, anyone is working right now on that? Or
Not me, but yes, I've heard of someone using eye drops, but eye drops that allow you to see a bit more at night than without the eyes. But yeah, I'm sure there'll be other ways. But even sensing infrasound would be good, or like all the senses that other species have. If you think of it, it would have a huge consequence in the way we are wasting so much energy through machines or through technology that is external. But yeah, night vision is, I think, one of the biggest changes that we'll see.
I think we have time for just one or two more questions, short ones, over there.
We are already here.
Up over there.
Sorry, so you were talking earlier about transgender, and I was thinking about identity and how already today the younger generations get pretty confused about what it means to be human and all the stuff relating their sexuality and everything. Do you think becoming a cyborg will help them better understand their identity, or do you think it will further hinder these questions about identity?
It's the opposite. I think this identity is something that many people have been hiding at their house. I mean, there's many people who identify as being cyborg but don't dare to say it. There's many people who identify as being a different species and they don't say it. and now they are emailing us saying that they've always felt that they were another species. Even old people who say that they've felt that they were not human for many long time. I mean, not being human is not bad. You can identify as being a different species, and that's not superior or inferior. It's just a different species. So I think it will help many people put a name to what they feel. Yeah, being trans-species means simply that you have an aim, or that you feel that you should have different new senses or new organs. And there's many people, especially teenagers, that identify like this.
Maybe helping them become more complete.
Well, there's two. So one case, for example, there's people like teenagers who identify as cyborgs, and they want to have the biological body of a cyborg when they are 18. So some people might want to have surgery, but others might just identify as cyborgs without implants. Many of you might already identify as cyborgs without having an implant. You don't need an implant to identify as cyborg. In the same way that I don't need to, if I say that I identify as a woman, I don't need to have the body of a woman, or I might want to have surgery and have the body of the woman. So it happens the same with people who now identify as cyborg, don't necessarily have the body of a cyborg. It happens the opposite as well. Many people who have technology inside, for medical reasons, do not identify as cyborgs, but they do have the body of a cyborg. They have cybernetics in the organism, so there's these two situations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for Neil. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.